residents, businesses, and community stakeholders, and thank you for joining us this evening to discuss the Downtown Transformation Project. We're sorry for the technical difficulties getting started this evening, but nothing's quite gone as planned today, so why start now? We certainly wish we could have been here in a public forum at the Idea Lab to review the plans with you this evening. Things didn't work out that way, but I hope you understand we were really putting the health and the interests of the residents, businesses, and stakeholders of the city of Fitchburg in our minds as we made that decision. And hopefully what we're doing this evening and in the next few weeks will help to provide an opportunity for public input to talk about this important project. Just to introduce myself briefly, I'm Tom Skrowski. I'm the Executive Director of Planning and Community Development for the City of Fitchburg. I'm joined here with Nicholas Bossanetto, our City Engineer and Commissioner of Public Works, Dan Boulay from Ty and Bond, as well as Alex Fegnan, our other traffic engineer at Ty and Bond. And we're here to talk about the project. And just to give you a brief overview, we'll be reviewing in brief the project benefits of a two-way conversion. I'm talking a little bit about the timeline that we have ahead of us, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the project design. And from there, we'll have a Q&A period. We'll answer some frequently asked questions, but we'll also be looking to get some audience feedback throughout the program. So let's get right into it. Downtown Transformation Project, the project overview. So to start this discussion, we really need to start in 1967 and thinking about even the way things were before then. Main Street, for the longest time, for decades really, had 2 lanes, two-way traffic. And really that's what we're looking to return to. And that's what urban planners across the country have been doing for the last 20 years, really reversing decisions we made in the 60s to make our roadways work better for cars and not for people. But in 1967, we made that decision to go to a 2-lane, one-way Boulder Drive and Main Street. And these 2 arterials, it's important to note, are classified under the National Highway System as an urban principal arterial roadway. What that means in layman's terms, this is an important roadway for people in north central Mass. This is a way that people get to points east and west from the city of Fitchburg. Boulder Drive and Main Street play a hugely important role in that regard. And you know, again, we've been working under this existing configuration for some time, and every time I look at this picture, I think of something a city councilor once told me. In talking about Main Street and Boulder Drive, they said, you know, Tom, Main Street, Boulder Drive, that is the heart of our downtown, and the downtown is the heart of our city. And I want you all to think about that as we're talking today, because if Main Street and Boulder Drive are the heart of our downtown, and you know, this is really the heart of our city, what we're doing right now with a 2-lane, one-way configuration is the equivalent to eating a Hardee's Monster Thick Burger. 1,400 calories, over 100 grams of fat. Okay, if downtown is our heart and Main Street and Boulder Drive are the heart of our downtown, we are giving ourselves heart disease. And what a one-way, 2-lane configuration does is a number of things that are detrimental to the health of our downtown. First and foremost, it creates high-speed traffic. And it creates roads for cars, not people, and inefficient roadway networks. One of the things I think about when I look at a one-way, 2-lane traffic pattern, imagine you're going to Strong Style Coffee and you're at the Water Street Bridge. It's a stone's throw away, but to get there, you have to take a left off of the Water Street Bridge after waiting at the signal. You need to then take another left at Main and Putnam to get to another signal at Boulder and Putnam to take another left to finally get to your destination. Again, as the crow flies, that is a very short distance that you're traveling, but it's a very inefficient way to get there. So although the current configuration prioritizes cars over people, it doesn't really work well for cars either. And you know, the last thing, there's really only one way in and one way out of downtown with this current traffic pattern. And in no place do you find that more acute when Civic Days is taking place in the summer and we have to close down our Main Street. I remember a time a few years ago, it took me 45 minutes while Main Street was closed during Civic Days to get from the Water Street Bridge all the way to Mechanic Street. And the worst part is I wasn't trying to get to Mechanic Street. I was trying to get to 166 Boulder Drive to get back to work. But when Main Street or Boulder Drive are closed in our current configuration, where there is that bottleneck, one way in, one way out, it can create hang-ups. And this configuration has not worked well for us at all. And that's why there's been efforts to change it since, as far as I can recall. Looking back in the plans within our city departments, we have as far as 1996. We talked about a downtown development standpoint. It is desirable to revise traffic operations on Main Street from one-way to two-way. We said the same thing again in 1999. Converting to two-way could be a crucial element in the revitalization process for downtown business development, expanding living opportunities, and cultural and recreational improvements. We said it again in our urban renewal plan. In 1999, we called this traffic pattern obsolete. It was obsolete 20 years ago. And it would make Main Street a friendlier place to shop, visit, and do business if we converted to a two-way travel. Again, in our Vision 2020, our master plan in 1999, having 2 lanes of high-speed traffic makes the Main Street area much less welcoming to pedestrians, thus decreasing its value as a retail zone. I hear that time and time again when I'm talking with folks in the business community and the developer community. One way, 2 lanes of travel is not a development-friendly infrastructure pattern. And from about 1999 until today, we've largely been talking about what to do. We've been planning for what to do. We've been involved in what I'd call analysis paralysis. We've been trying to find the perfect solution to our two-way Main Street problems. And I think to some degree we've let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think there's another reason we haven't really had the opportunity to make this project happen, and that's because it's expensive. Doing a full-scale reconstruction of Main Street and Boulder Drive to accommodate for two-way traffic is complicated, and we haven't had the opportunity until today. And before we talk about today, I just want to take a step back and think with you all about where we've come from. Okay, since 1996 to 2020, we've had 24 years of planning, 24 years of talking about converting to a two-way traffic pattern. Let's think about where we were in 1996. Okay, in 1996, the #1 movie was Independence Day. The #1 song was the Macarena. And Tom Brady was a backup quarterback at the University of Michigan. He had just completed his first year as a backup riding the bench as a freshman. So just to put this into context, in the time we've spent planning and talking about converting to two-way travel, Tom Brady became the starting quarterback at the University of Michigan. He graduated from college. He was drafted by the Patriots. He sat on the bench and then became the starting quarterback for the Patriots. He built a dynasty. He won 6 Super Bowl rings. And all in that time, all we've done is talk about converting to a two-way travel pattern. And I think we're now in a time, in a position where we can get it done. And so where we are today, we've got a great opportunity, and particularly with some state financing that we have through 2 important state programs. The first is the Mass Works program, a $3 million economic development infrastructure grant that will help serve as the catalyst to make this project happen. In addition, we received a $399,000 Complete Streets grant. 310 of that will be allocated towards this project. The remainder will go to a project on Electric Avenue. But 310 of that project will go also to supporting walkable and bikeable infrastructure for this project. And again, our design team here and Commissioner Bassanetto will really get into the nuts and bolts, but some of the things we'll be looking at here: intersection modifications, new traffic signals, enhanced crosswalks and curb cuts, flashing beacon crosswalks, sidewalk repairs where appropriate, microsurfacing on Main and Boulder, wayfinding and signage improvements, and bike connectivity to the soon-to-be-built Twin City Rail Trail. So before we get into the designs and we talk about the nuts and bolts, I just want to talk briefly about the project benefits to conversion to a two-way travel and to including all of these Complete Streets benefits. Really, it's going to provide 3 key things: flexibility, it's going to provide alignment with a number of key projects, both capital and planning underway downtown, and thirdly, it's going to allow for an improved pedestrian experience. Let's start with flexibility. Again, for cars, it's going to have the same number of lanes in each direction, but a more efficient distribution of traffic. So let's return back to that example. if you were to get coffee at Strong Style Coffee, under our new configuration, as the designers will show you, you'll simply need to take a right turn off the Water Street Bridge, and you'll hop right onto Boulder Drive, and you'll be right there. It's a more efficient way for an automobile to travel. For people, it allows the city to close off streets for large events with minimal disruption. So again, thinking of Civic Days, if we were to close down Main Street with a two-way Boulder Drive, we can make that happen and have ways in and out of downtown. What you see here in the photo was dining al fresco. That was a great event for people dining al fresco downtown, but I can't imagine it was that much fun for automobile drivers. Okay, and this is going to allow the city to close off Main Street for those events. Similarly, we can close off Boulder Drive. Let's say the Nashua River Brewers Festival is happening at Riverfront Park. We could close off Boulder Drive and create pedestrian connections between Riverfront Park and the downtown. It's something we've talked about in our Smart Growth America plan in 2017, connecting to the river. It's something I know I just saw a petition come in to the Public Works Committee through Councilor Boschman to talk about closing off Boulder Drive to pedestrian-only traffic. This will allow us to experiment from time to time for certain public events to make that happen. It's also more flexible for emergency vehicles. One of the things we learned in the one-lane Main Street experiment was that if you are going to constrain traffic to one lane only, it makes things difficult for police and fire. This solution creates more options in the event of an emergency. Again, there's more than one way in and one way out of downtown, and Fitchburg Police and Fitchburg Fire will have a way to get in and to get out. So it provides a lot of important flexibility. And lastly, it allows for flexibility in construction projects, which segues me to the next point. This project is going to allow for some really important alignment with key projects that are underway. Chief among them is the Water Street Bridge project, a $22.5 million MassDOT project that's currently in the design phase. We should be seeing the first design for MassDOT in the next few months. We've been working with MassDOT for the last year, coordinating our design to make sure that it works with what they're doing. For example, we've worked with them to advocate for 3 northbound lanes coming up to the Water Street Bridge entering downtown. One of those lanes will then be able to turn off and have easier access to Boulder Drive. This project, the Downtown Transformation Project, will also be completed before the Water Street Bridge project. Although they don't anticipate closing down closing down the bridge at large during the event, there will be disruptions, and this will allow for detours. And of course, now folks would also be able to take Putnam Street to access downtown. This project will also align with a number of underground infrastructure projects taking place in the next 5 years downtown. We've got Unitil, sewer separation, and a number of other utility projects outlined here. And Commissioner Bassanetto, do you want to share a few words about what we have taking place?
Sure. So in the upcoming near future, in the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure projects happening within the downtown area, Main Street, north of Main Street, south of Main Street. Unitil, as you are probably aware, is going throughout the city replacing the old cast iron gas system with a new plastic-coated steel system. So that Unitil is going to be coming through Main Street next year, around 2021. And they're going to be replacing all the gas lines on Main Street. So they're going to be coming down, ripping up the street. The years after that, we also have stormwater improvements that we need to do on Main Street. We're doing stormwater improvements throughout the city as part also of the combined sewer overflow separation system. The sewer separation project for Main Street will be around 2023 or 2024. Again, we're doing this throughout the city, but we'll be in Main Street around that time. Also, water lines need to be replaced. So over the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot of work happening on Main Street. And as Tom mentioned previously, that flexibility of allowing us to detour traffic onto Boulder while we do work on Main Street is going to be vital to a successful construction project.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. It's also going to align well with the Twin Cities Rail Trail project. This project has been 15 plus years in the making, but to be clear, it's happening, and it's starting construction this spring. They've selected the design team. We're ready to go on the first phase. That will be a 4.5-mile rail trail connecting downtown Leominster with downtown Fitchburg. It's going to end at the intermodal station. We've still got some work to do to build full-scale connectivity, but at the end of the day, we could see over 6 miles of near continuous bicycle-friendly infrastructure. And I think that's a really critical piece for a rail trail like this that can bring in recreational travel from folks that don't live in Fitchburg, gives them an opportunity to get to Fitchburg, to get to downtown. But without a project like this, they have nowhere to go once they get here. This helps build that connectivity. And lastly, it aligns with a lot of downtown revitalization work that we're doing. This project is important, but to be clear, we know it's not a silver bullet. We know that this project needs to be supported by a host of other planning efforts that are underway. For example, we have a TDI district. We're one of few communities in the state that have the state's eyes and ears watching what the city of Fitchburg, and in particular our downtown, is doing over the next few years. We have the Reimagine North Main Coalition, a coalition of public, private, and nonprofit leaders working to revitalize our downtown. We have a smart growth district that's looking to streamline the process for housing development and have already permitted over 100 new units just in the last 6 months of housing. We have over $100 million total in capital investment between the Fitchburg Arts Community, the City Hall project, and the Fitchburg Theater Block. And we have an HDIP market rate district within this downtown that allows for state tax credits for housing development. We hired a downtown coordinator this last year through our CDBG program, along with Fitchburg State University. Marissa Montero's been working since September, working with local business owners and creating and cultivating a downtown events infrastructure, which I think was just highlighted a few weeks ago with the Leap Year Lights Festival, which I thought was fantastic. And we look forward to seeing the work she does in the next year. We are doing comprehensive zoning reform, not just focused on downtown, but it will certainly contain important downtown elements. We're going to be working on a traffic study, actually just completed one, and you'll see a sneak preview of that tonight. We'll be presenting it to City Council later in the spring and making some improvements to the way that we handle parking downtown, because we know currently it's not being managed effectively, or at least as well as it could. We also took advantage of the Opportunity Zone designation through the local tax code, and basically have provided a new incentive to utilize the tax code to convince developers to invest downtown. Our police department does foot patrols, particularly in the warmer months. And in the past few years, we've had 3 new historic district designations downtown, which creates a really important tool for investment and for the investment community. So the Fitchburg Arts Community, one of the projects that was able to take advantage of the historic tax credit process, which gives tax credits of up to 40% to cover the cost of redevelopment. The theater block as well, and the Moran Square redevelopment also utilized historic tax credits, and that project will be breaking ground later this year. So we've got a lot of other things happening, not just a 2-way Main Street project, and we know it's critical that this isn't looked at in a vacuum, but we're really making it part of a comprehensive effort to change the way that we think and feel about our downtown. Finally, the project is going to improve the pedestrian experience. And again, it's one of the key things we've been focused on. If we want to build a downtown that works for people, we've got to improve the pedestrian experience. And the National Transportation Safety Association has found very clear links between vehicle speeds and pedestrian injuries. If you're traveling at 20 miles an hour, 1 in 10 pedestrians would die. But at 30 miles an hour, that number jumps to 5 in 10. At 40 miles an hour, that number jumps to 9 in 10. So there are significant impacts on pedestrian deaths the faster you go. And currently, with our roadway configuration acting like a raceway, it does not convince people to travel downtown by foot. And we really need to increase the amount of foot traffic we have downtown to have a thriving downtown. So to get briefly into the project timeline, right now we're at the 25% design phase. We'll be looking to wrap up final designs late in spring. In early summer, the bids will be advertised, and mid-summer we'll be awarding the contract. Construction will begin late summer of this year, and it will end in fall of 2021. So we're on a very aggressive, a very rapid timetable, which is why we wanted to move forward with the public comment period in a virtual setting and provide ample opportunity for residents, for businesses, for community stakeholders to provide their input. So in light of this evening's event and moving things to a virtual setting, here's what we've done to accommodate public comment in the next few weeks. We've moved it online. So if you go to fitchburgma.gov/Boulder Main Project, you can access our project page, which reviews the project designs, a one-pager that kind of gives an overview of the project. You can also access it from our main page or by clicking on Services and the Main Street and Boulder Drive project. And from there, you can provide public comment via our public comment portal or by emailing comdev@fitchburgma.gov. We already got one great question in from that email earlier today that we'll be answering later. And also at the City Hall lobby, we have the designs posted up, and we're doing it the old-fashioned way as well. If you have comments that you'd like to write on a Post-it note and post right up on the design, we'll also be responding to those. The public comment period will close March 23rd. That doesn't mean the conversation for this project closes, but in terms of getting time bond, getting our Commissioner of Public Works the information that they need to feed it into a design to work towards our final design for this project. But we'll be keeping periodic updates with our progress on that project page. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off now to the design team to review the three main sections of this project, starting with the Water Street Bridge. I think it'll take a moment to load up. But Alex, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, sure. And I'll step up to the screen in a second and talk directly to the map. But I just wanted to say, Tom did an excellent job laying context here for what the city of Fitchburg's trying to accomplish. And now that we're advancing to the design stage, my particular role going forward in this project as a transportation engineer is to think through a lot of the issues that you experience in a downtown when you try to reconfigure a traffic network like this. My specialty is transportation engineering, but when you're dealing with downtown environments, it goes beyond the engineering aspect. There's so many stakeholders involved in a downtown environment, and that's why it's so important to have this public interface and be able to talk to the plans and be able to have the public provide comment, because there are business and residents and a lot of dense use in a downtown environment, and all those uses and needs really need to be accounted for. So the first plan up on the screen here, and I can speak from this location, but we're looking at the Water Street Bridge, which is a project that the town is coordinating with Mass DOT on. And this project, our project, the Downtown Improvements, is on both sides. So it's a little bit sensitive in that we need to make sure we're coordinating with the state DOT and that we're incorporating their design really, and making sure that they're incorporating the needs of Fitchburg in the downtown. I think the key element here from the perspective of this project is beneath the bridge, the commissioner in particular is coordinating with Mass DOT to widen the road section a little bit. This is one of the narrowest points on the entire project. And so in order to get our two-way travel lanes beneath the bridge and have pedestrian accommodation in the form of a sidewalk, we need a little bit more width down there. So the commissioner has been spearheading the effort with Mass DOT to really make sure that we get what we need out of this design. A couple other key elements I guess I'll point out while we're on this particular plan sheet. So we're at the east end of the project here. Just globally speaking for a second, the project we're discussing tonight starts on the west end of where Boulder Drive diverges from Main Street over near the City Hall building. This is the eastern end of the project. So the intermodal center is just to the edge of the screen on the right. You've got the Water Street Bridge, and you've got the connection of Boulder Drive coming back into Main Street. So a couple things to point out. As we do a two-way conversion, we have to make some changes to the roads. And overall, the project tries to stay within the existing curb lines. However, particularly at the east and the west end, we have to make some intersection modifications. So this is the east end, again, Boulder Drive coming into Main Street. What you're going to be able to do as a driver in the proposed condition, if you're driving down along Boulder Drive heading eastbound, you can take a right-hand turn off of Boulder Drive and continue towards the intermodal center and away from the downtown. If you're on Main Street, you'll have the option, if you're coming off the Water Street Bridge or you're coming from the east direction, you'll have the option to turn onto Boulder Drive. And the reason for that is because if your destination isn't specifically in the downtown area, then this provides you the flexibility of getting around downtown to points west, to points south, without having to go through kind of the dense development area in the downtown. Another key element on this particular plan right here is Cushing Street. So Cushing Street right now allows vehicles to come up from Boulder Drive and get onto Main Street. The existing building, and I can get up and talk to this a little bit too, might be easier. The existing building at this corner right here really shields traffic's ability to see vehicles coming off Cushing. And if we start talking about two-way Main Street traffic and vehicles coming down Main Street in this direction, there's a sight distance issue here. So as a transportation engineer, we think about safety first. And turning movements off of Cushing aren't going to be safe in this new configuration with Main Street and Boulder Drive. So we're looking to close Cushing Street as part of this project, turn it into a pedestrian plaza area. Hopefully there'll be some business opportunity with the adjoining businesses, but really this is a safety-focused move where we want to eliminate vehicles taking a quick turn off of there and coming in, creating accidents in this intersection. The side effect is Blossom Street coming down from the north is coming into Boulder Drive. That movement is congested today, so eliminating Cushing Street as an opposing traffic will make Blossom Street function a little bit better. A couple other key points I can point out while we're on this slide. Existing parking generally remains throughout Main Street. This project will have a net addition actually of about 7 parking spaces on Main Street at the end of the day. So the existing parking is being preserved throughout all these improvements. The existing loading zones for trucks, operating with the businesses, there's some areas where there's hatched off for no parking. Those areas generally exist today. We may be modifying them or shifting them a little bit, but those are important zones for the business owners on Main Street. Those business owners, their deliveries can get to their shops they can, without much hassle, and that's a big benefit for business owners. Another thing to point out is that there's some bike lane accommodation down on Boulder Drive. So you see on Boulder Drive with the 2-lane, we have the opportunity there to provide a little bit of dedicated bicycle accommodation. And this ties in nice with if the Twin City Path's coming up to the Intermodal Center, now you have a connection on Boulder Drive. You can go around and come up one of the side streets into downtown, or if you're simply going up towards the Common, you can go right around the downtown. Let's
It takes a moment.
Okay, we're going to move to the next plan. Anyway. So we're moving now from east to west through the project. So this is kind of the central portion. Another significant change that we're proposing is to upgrade or replace the 2 traffic signals, the signal at Putnam at Main and Putnam at Boulder. And that's to help facilitate a conversion of Putnam Street to a two-way street to provide a strong connection between Main Street and Boulder Drive. We just discussed the closing of Cushing Street. People use that street now to get up to the Water Street Bridge, but having an efficient signal operating at Putnam Street should mitigate that any issue with people needing to move to Putnam Street now to make that potential movement. Across from Pritchard Street, there's the Pritchard Street parking garage, parking deck area. Just a simple change, but on the Main Street at the parking deck elevation, we're going to reverse the in and the out there. Now that you're going to have 2-way on Main Street, you're going to return to more of a normal in-out configuration there as opposed to what it is today. I'd also point out on the Boulder Drive side of that parking deck, there's an entrance there, and right now there's permit parking only. The city's is making an effort to provide some public parking at that entrance as well, because with the addition of bike accommodation on Boulder Drive, some opportunity for on-street parking goes away. So the city's working to actively mitigate that and make sure that stakeholders down here on Boulder Drive still have ample parking for their businesses. I guess we could just point out, the continued parking. That's okay, Tom.
Okay.
The continued parking along that slide, but it carries over onto the west end of the project. So on this project, we see the City Hall, the ongoing exciting project for the city of Fitchburg. Tom touched on the theater block redevelopment that Fitchburg's spearheading. Both of these projects are exciting in the fact that they're bringing, they're reinvigorating portions of downtown, and in this case, they both happen to be on this western kind of gateway section of the downtown. So, again, these projects dovetail nicely together. As part of that City Hall project, there's going to be some accessible on-street parking and a bus stop included. I'd also point out that this little parking bank right here is actually some of the additional parking that we're able to fit in as part of this 2-way conversion. If I get over to the western intersection, this is probably the most significant change from a designer perspective. So as you well know, if you're driving from the Common today, you're coming down, approaching our project from the west, traveling east from the town common, you're directed down to Boulder Drive, and that's your only option. Well, with this project, we really want to seek the opportunity to provide that access back to downtown. We went back and forth. We worked with Nick and Tom and others at the city to come up with a concept here that really works for the city of Fitchburg. And the consensus of stakeholders that were engaged originally was to make sure that people can get downtown. That's the priority here. So let's take this as if you're driving. If you're coming down along the common, you're coming through the Rollstone intersection. In the proposed concept, you're going to have a 50-50 choice now. If your destination is downtown Fitchburg, right along Main Street, you can continue straight on to Main Street if you're coming through that intersection area. If your destination is, east of downtown or southerly, you can go down to Boulder Drive like you would today and continue on to that destination. If you're a driver on Main Street and you're heading back in the direction of the town common, you can easily stay on Main Street and head up to the town common. And if you're a driver on Boulder Drive, this is the only movement, and when you come up to the new West End intersection, this is the only movement where you're going to have a stop. But we've done a few things here with the design to try to make that stop minimize the inconvenience of that stop, I guess would be the way to say it. So when you stop at that location, you're only going to have to worry about crossing one lane of oncoming traffic, and you're going to have a protected receiving lane to drive into. So really, it should be easier to navigate than a normal intersection. It should be easier to navigate than a normal stop sign condition. In terms of other key components, those are really the significant components. I would point out that throughout the plans that we just scrolled through, there are locations where we're providing spot treatments for sidewalk repair. The pedestrian improvements are really focused on two things, accessibility and safety. So we want our sidewalks to be accessible. We want our curb ramps to be useful to people who might be in a wheelchair, to people who may push in a stroller. People that have any kind of mobility impairment, we want to make sure they have full use of our public facilities. So accessibility is really an important concept, and largely that's driven by sidewalks that are in good repair and curb ramps that get you down to street grade. We're also making a lot of visibility improvements at the various crosswalks. Tom mentioned earlier some flashing beacons. There will be some in certain locations where we feel maybe the risk is a little higher because it's not as visible of a crosswalk. We're also going to make sure that we have, as we're driving down Main Street, that we have clear sight lines to these crosswalks. So if you're stepping into a crosswalk as a pedestrian, you can see the car can see you. And those are the types of decisions that drive something like closing Cushing Street. And I would just point out from a pedestrian safety perspective, again, Tom mentioned this earlier, so he stole some of my thunder, but converting to this more regular road configuration where we have one lane of traffic in each direction is proven time and time again to be inherently safer for pedestrians. When you have two lanes going in the same direction, there's a much higher rate of pedestrian collisions at crosswalks. And so inherently this project will bring much safer and friendlier pedestrian environment to downtown.
Great. Thank you, Alex. And thank you to the Tie and Bond team and to Commissioner Balsanetto. They've been working tirelessly on these designs, getting them together, and particularly with the western intersection, but also throughout. Commissioner Balsanetto has really helped work with this group, this team of really skilled traffic engineering professionals to put together a really good product that I think we're all proud of and we're all really excited to implement downtown. Before we take some questions, I wanted to answer a few frequently asked questions that we saw on our Facebook event page over the last couple days, and just I could kind of boil them down into a few key themes that I'll review. So first of all, I heard a common question about why so much focus on Main Street. And certainly, as I mentioned before, we have a lot of things going on downtown, a lot of planning efforts downtown, and a lot of sort of comprehensive work on Main Street. But if we're looking strictly at the street, the focus really hasn't been there. And one way to see that, you can take a look at this bar chart or pie chart here that shows from 2016 to 2019, our paving and construction monies that we've been putting into our roadways, about 95% of it has been streets that are not Main Street. And just a sliver under 5% has been Main Street, and that's primarily been our Upper Common Complete Streets project. So again, if we go back to Main Street as the heart of our downtown and downtown is the heart of our city, are we putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to roadway work? And I think this is a good opportunity to shift that balance a little bit and show some pride in our downtown and show some pride on Main Street and Boulder Drive. Another question, where will people park? As was noted, you know, we are certainly adding a few spots on Main Street, but we're losing quite a few on Boulder Drive. And the answer to that question is really that adequate parking supply exists elsewhere. The on-street parking on Main and other side streets, the Putnam Street garage, the Mill Street garage. As Alex noted, we're looking to create public access to the Mill Street garage in the next year as we're looking to implement the core components of that parking study. And then 166 Boulder Drive, otherwise known as Putnam Place. If you really look at Boulder Drive as you're traveling through, that entire street on both sides is one giant parking lot. And this isn't just a hunch we have, okay? This is something that we've developed through a parking study, working as a part of the City Hall and Theater project for the last year. We've worked with Walker Consultants to develop a parking study, which again, the City Council will be seeing later in the spring, but you'll get a sneak peek right here. We did a demand analysis, and basically what we looked at is our parking at different points of the day and our parking utilization, 10 in the morning, noon, 2, 6:30, and 9 p.m. And if you look at right near the bottom in red is Boulder Drive, that on-street parking. At its peak, at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's 30 cars parking there. At its lowest number, it's as few as 7. When I left the office today, I saw 1 car parked on Boulder Drive. We feel like we've got adequate supply elsewhere throughout, particularly in the areas that we highlighted. In all of those lots, in the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority lot at 166 Boulder Drive, as well as the Mill Street and the Putnam Street garage. We've got a lot of parking to meet the demands that we need. And again, we're working on improving the efficiency and our management of the parking that we have. The third question, why don't you just pave the roads? We don't just get that on our Facebook page, we certainly get that everywhere. And I think, you know, we can talk a little bit more about how we're working to improve the conditions of our roads, but I think the first thing to state, again, the main funding for this project came from the Mass Works program. And Mass Works is not an infrastructure grant program. It is an economic development grant that supports infrastructure, and that's a really important distinction because if we just went to if we went to the state and we asked for millions of dollars just to pave our roads for the Mass Works program, they would not give us the funding. The way the Mass Works program works is you have to look at one key development project, or in this case with our downtown, a series of development projects, and build a case that the work that we're doing will enhance economic development. It can't simply be paving the roads. And you know, I think we were faced with a choice because we knew we had a very competitive project with our downtown Main Street Boulder Drive project because of all the investment that's building and all the excitement that's building downtown. But we also know we have a lot of other needs paving the roads. We could have chosen not to apply, but in the end, we decided to take advantage of this competitive opportunity. And again, we received a top 5 grant award in the state because I think the state sees what we see, and that's the momentum building downtown, and they want to be a part of it. But in terms of our other efforts to improve the roadway conditions, Commissioner Bassanetta, would you like to touch on that a bit?
Improving the pavement conditions of the roads throughout the city. Every year we get Chapter 90 money from MassDOT, and we try to spend it the best we can, but it's only $1.2 million, so it doesn't stretch very far. We got 180 miles of roads, so we try our best. We'll keep seeking other revenue sources of funding and do our best.
And we're working diligently to do that on all fronts. But you know, we saw a good opportunity here and we wanted to take advantage of it. Another question we've seen often, Main Street is too small for two-way traffic. And I think that is a bit of feedback from the one-lane Main Street experiment, where again, we had 2 westbound lanes and we turned it into 1 westbound lane. We actually got rid of a lane of traffic. An important distinction here with this project is we're not going to have that. Our current configuration has 2 westbound lanes and 2 eastbound lanes. The proposed configuration will still have 2 westbound lanes and 2 eastbound lanes. They're just going to be distributed in a more efficient fashion. So again, back in the day, Main Street, as I've heard from many folks, was certainly wider and provided for more accommodations. But Boulder Drive didn't exist back then. Now it does. And even though our main street's narrower, we have Boulder Drive to serve as sort of a pressure release valve, as it were, for traffic. And we have the capacity within our existing network to make this happen. And that's why we have the traffic design team here that took a look at the studies and really reviewed the existing conditions and were clear to us that this project can happen.
Tom, if I could real quick too,
Yep.
just from a purely engineering perspective, the narrowest today between the existing curb lines that Main Street is 24 feet. So that fits two 12-foot travel lanes, which are normally dimensioned travel lanes. Boulder Drive is generally 34 feet wide. At one location today, underneath that Water Street Bridge, it's 22. 11-foot travel lanes are still perfectly acceptable, normal width travel lanes. However, the commissioner is working with DOT to try to get a little bit more width under there, in which case we'll be able to have the two 12-foot lanes. So just bringing that engineering element into it against that question, you know, in the existing curb line configuration, the width is there to go with opposing travel lanes in both directions.
Great. And the last common question we get, I get this all the time, what's the point of a bike lane? Again, Boulder Drive will be having bike lanes in both directions, and really there's a couple different answers. I'll start with the really practical one if you're not a fan of bicycles. The practical answer is that we need to have a buffer for Fitchburg Police and Fitchburg Fire travel throughout our downtown. Again, Main Street and Boulder Drive are a really key corridor to get to points both west and east. And again, lessons learned from the one-lane Main Street experiment, our emergency vehicles need a way to get through downtown. What Boulder Drive will have with these bike lanes is effectively a lane for vehicles to pull to the side if a fire or a police vehicle needs to get through, because we will have more constrained lanes of traffic. That's the practical response, and it's meeting a really critical need we learned about through the one-lane main experiment. It's also practical in the sense of our grant requirements for MassWorks and Complete Streets prioritize projects that embrace a Complete Streets approach. The road widths were not sufficient on Main Street to have bike lanes, and they were on Boulder Drive, so we took advantage of that opportunity to create streets that work for everybody, cars, people, and bicycles. And again, it also ties back to our planning efforts from the Economic Development Strategic Plan that we just came out with in 2018 and was approved by our City Council. We had 180 action items from that plan. And this one right here, to make the 1-mile route between the Fitchburg State University campus and the public library one of the most pedestrian and bicycle-friendly streets in the city. That was a top 10 action item of 180 that we had throughout this plan. It was clear to us that it was a priority in the community to make this happen, and the bike lane, again, is an effort to start to build a roadway network to be more bicycle friendly and to be more friendly to the pedestrian. And lastly, I would say Rome didn't build their bike lanes in a day. Okay, building a network takes time, and that's what we're doing. We're slowly building a network, piece by piece, bit by bit, and I think everyone at this table would readily admit we're not there yet. We don't have a network of continuous bicycle travel, so I understand and can empathize that it feels like we aren't building that network, but we're slowly getting there. And just to show you on the map up here, briefly, we started with our River Street bike lane project through the MassWorks program. That was a bike lane on an island and was the epitome of, you know, the bike lane to nowhere, if you will. But taken together with the work that we've done with the Complete Streets program, this project, the Main and Boulder project, and the 4.5-mile rail trail from downtown Leominster to downtown Fitchburg, we are now starting to slowly build a network. Again, we're not there yet. It's not perfect, but we're working to get there. So those were the 5 main questions we saw throughout the Facebook page. I've had a couple quick questions come in, and actually the first one I'll address came from our new email, comdev@fitchburgma.gov. I got an email today from Samuel. Thank you for being the first email contestant on this game. I don't know. You should get some kind of prize. But your question was regarding our other entryway corridors and what are we doing to prioritize funding in the entryways to and from Route 2. And I think it's a really important question because those are also the entryways to our downtown. And again, I'd just like the audience to think about, there's really 3 main ways we can fund major roadway projects in the city. The first is through the MassWorks program, and as we mentioned, that's really needs to be tied to a key economic development project. There is one gateway corridor that we're, maybe in the next few years might have a good MassWorks project for, and that's Airport Road. We've been working for the past few years with Mass Development on building a site readiness plan to redevelop a 43.5 acre lot that's owned by the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority. If we can make that happen, that's an ideal case for a MassWorks project in a key gateway corridor, and that's one we're focusing on through that program. Another program is the TIP, and that's our regional transportation plan that helps prioritize funding to infrastructure needs. The Twin City Rail Trail and the Water Street Bridge project are both TIP projects, and certainly in our entryway corridors, we're looking at prioritizing certain sites, and Commissioner Bassanetto, I don't know if you'd like to touch on that a bit.
On what?
The TIP. I think one area in particular, the Water Street corridor, we've conducted some of the initial planning to get that project on the TIP. We actually just submitted a petition to MRPC to get on the Unified Planning Work Program to do a study of that corridor, which is really the first key step to getting a project on the TIP, which is sort of a 5-year plan for funding. And we're always looking at other opportunities in our gateway corridors. So those are 2 ways you can fund things. The third way is to increase our tax base generally. And again, to bring us back, if we believe that Main Street and Boulder Drive are the heart of our downtown, and the downtown is the heart of our city, if we don't have full-scale revitalization within that corridor, we're not going to see the tax base growth that we need to reinvest in our roads and other places throughout the city. And this is really where we need to start to help make that happen. So Samuel, I hope that answers your question, but I'll also follow up tomorrow afternoon via email to see if you've got any other further questions or comments. Another question we got was about loading zones. It's a particular concern with the business community. How are folks going to handle loading on both Main Street and Boulder Drive? Do you guys want to handle that?
Yeah, I'd just say, as we work through the plans a little bit, there's some areas out there today that are loading zones. Those areas are being preserved as part of this project. It's critical that business owners have that ability to get deliveries at their place of business. Boulder Drive, even with the bike lane coming in, you don't want to see the a loading occur in that bike lane space, but there is sufficient parking, surface parking. Generally, the buildings down there are set back a little bit from the road, so there tends to be some space to perform that loading. But I think the key takeaway here is we're not going after that space. We're not trying to use it for something else. The loading zones that are out there, especially on Main Street, where it's this little bit of a tighter corridor, are going to be there when this project's said and done.
Okay. So I want to bring our attention back up here because you're going to follow with me real time as I make an amendment. Again, we had to pull together this online system for public comment last minute, so I hope you can forgive the error. But it's actually, we can do this together, everyone. It's www.fitchburgma.gov/Main Boulder Project, not Boulder Main Project. And that's how you can access our online page that can cover a lot of the stuff we talked about today. Again, it has all of the designs. It has an opportunity for you to send emails to comdev@fitchburgma.gov, which we'll try to get to as soon as possible. And again, feel free to submit any questions or comments in the City Hall lobby via the post-its that we have set up there with the designs. And it also gives you an opportunity to sign up for the Community Development Newsletter, which can keep you updated on project updates as we're proceeding through from the design phase to the construction phase and so on and so forth. As Alex had mentioned at the outset, this is a really critical project, and it affects a number of different businesses, residents, and community stakeholders. And again, we hope this to be the start of a conversation, not the end of it, with how we can really help achieve the most optimal outcome for all parties. And we really want to make sure we're hearing your input both today and into the future. So please utilize the virtual system we have for connecting online to submit your feedback. And one last comment, I'm never great with thank yous, so I'm sorry that it took me 55 minutes to get there. But thank you so much to FATV for having us here today. You know, we called in a bit of a frenzy early this morning, and we're unsure of how to handle this situation. And I can't say enough about how the team here has been so professional and on point and on the spot, helping us with everything we needed to pull this together. And hopefully the audience, you guys have found this to be a productive session, and hopefully you learned a lot about the project. But again, thank you, FATV, and we look forward to having these continued conversations in the month to come. And please feel free to stop by City Hall, stop by the Community Development Office at Suite 102, stop by the DPW office on Broad Street. If you have any particular questions about the project, we'd be happy to talk things through with you. Does the rest of the team have any other comments before we sign off?
No, I think it was a great presentation. Hopefully the rest of the citizens are excited as we are as well.
Okay.
It should be a good change.
We are certainly excited about it. So thank you all again for coming today. Thank you for listening this evening, and good evening, and God bless the city of Fitchburg.